to figure out what we need on our speedometer gear, we need to figure out what kind of gear ratio we have in our rear differential. Hey everyone, welcome back to Al's Mustang Garage. Today we're continuing to work on our 1967 Mustang Coupe. We're doing a transmission conversion, and with part of that, we're going to figure out what kind of speedometer gear we're going to put in the transmission, and also get it as accurate as possible with the gear ratio we have in the car and the tires we have in the car. So today I'm going to show you how we do that. I want to hear from you guys. What kind of rear ends are you running? What's your favorite rear end? Have you done a gear ratio swap? What are you guys running? So let's kind of hear from you guys in the comments below. So let's jump right into this. Without looking at the ID tag, because like I really don't trust the ID tags. Over 50 some odd years of people hot rodding their cars and changing out rear end gear ratios, you can't really trust the ID tag. So this method here will tell you exactly what you have for sure. I want to determine, number one, if this is an open differential or a limited slip or track block differential. So the easiest way to tell, obviously we have the car up in the air. You should too. You should have it safely secured, front wheels chopped. You're going to turn either one of these wheels. If the other wheel is not turning, you have an open differential. If it is turning, let's say turning in the opposite direction like this, you have an open differential. If you're turning and the other wheel is turning in the same direction, you have a track lock or a posi-trac differential. So that's the way to tell. Now that we know it's an open differential, we're going to have a slightly different procedure as far as determining the gear ratio of your rear axle. Okay, so what we've done is we've made a couple of reference points. So one on the driveline and one on the tire. Now on an open differential, we have to hold the other tire. We have to prevent that from moving. So this is like a lot easier if you have an assistant. So
that'd be me.
So Brittany's filming, holding the tire, and she's going to be counting this. So we're going to rotate this tire around 10 times. And during those 10 rotations, we're going to count how many times the driveline is turning, and then we're going to do a little bit of math. It's 10? Mm-hmm. Okay. So in 10 rotations of the wheel, I had almost 14 rotations on the driveline. It was like 13 and roughly 3/4. Now it's important to remember, like, you're gonna get like in the ballpark here. It's not gonna be an exact, you're not gonna get an exact number. So we're gonna say it's 13 and 3/4. So 13.75 in other words. And so because we have an open differential and we did this, 10 times, the 13 and 3/4 rotation, we're going to times that by 2. Okay, so 27.5, and like essentially all you got to do is move your decimal over 1. So 2.75 is roughly your gear ratio. But if you go to a quick Google search and you find out, because Ford had certain gear ratios on their differentials. So one of the Ford gear ratios is 2.79, which is really close to what our calculation is, which seems more realistic with what we were able to roughly calculate on the driveline turns, the 13 and 3/4 turns. 2.79 is our gear ratio, which happens to correspond with the ID tag on the differential. So we now know that ID tag is accurate. 2.79 is our gear ratio. Okay, so the next step in trying to determine what speedometer gear to use on your speedometer cable is you gotta see what is inside your transmission. So inside the tail shaft of the transmission, you're gonna have a drive gear. And it's gonna look kind of like this. This is an old worn out one that I have just to kind of show you what they look like. They come in different colors and different teeth count. So if you can get a look inside, you can shine your flashlight through your speedometer gear hole right here. And you can kind of see what color it is. This one has a black one, which is the 7 teeth on this transmission. But if you don't really know, you can get a good look and count the teeth and figure out what you have there, because that's going to come into the calculation to figure out what you need on the end of your cable. And then the last bit of information you need to determine your calculation is you need your tire size, which is going to be clearly labeled on your tire. 275, 4017. It's time to go do some math. Okay, so now that we have our tire size, we can calculate our tire revolutions per mile. So I usually use this tiresizecalculator.com website here. It's T-Y-R-E, must be from Australia or something. And so you just kind of scroll down to this little calculator here, and you can actually type in your tire size. So we have the 275, 40, 17. You calculate the tire dimensions. And right down here, it's going to give you your revolutions per mile. Now keep in mind, this is going to be based off a brand new tire. So as your tire wears, like, it's not going to be like this accurate, but that is going to get you in the ballpark with your tire size there. So with that, we can now plug that into our formula to calculate our driven gear. Okay, so now that we have all of our numbers, it's time to put those numbers into our formula and do a little bit of math. So we have our drive gear of 7. We're going to times 7 by our rear axle ratio, which is 2.79. We're going to take that number, which in our case happens to be 19.53, and you're going to times that by your tire revolutions per mile, which was 788. Okay, the number that you get from that is a very large number, 15,389.64. Now you want to move your decimal point over to the left 3 times. So you take that number and you divide it by 1,000. And that's going to give you a driven gear of 15.38964. So very rarely is it going to come out to be a nice solid round number. You need to choose the driven gear that is closest to this number, which would be 15. However, they don't make a 15 driven gear tooth count, so we would have to bump it up to a 16 in our case. But of course, like, you know, yours is going to be different. You're going to have different tire sizes. You may have a different rear axle ratio. So, but that's how you calculate that formula and come up with your driven gear tooth count. Okay, so now that we've determined the right gear teeth for our speedometer driven gear, we can now install it on our cable. So it should go on, should be able to turn nice and freely. You can also get new clips from National Parts Depot as well. And we're just going to install the clip. Okay. It should just retain like that, turn freely, and shouldn't come off. So now we can insert this here into the transmission. Like so. You have your little retainer there, and we need to get our retainer bolt and just kind of snug that up, and that will finish your speedometer cable installation.